Welcome to this launch event for the new novel by AA Abbott, which is called Flat White Lies. My name is Michael MacMahon. We have a panel which I will introduce to you in a minute. We're going to be talking for an hour, no more, and we're going to be talking about the book, about the themes it raises, notably career change, which is something that happens to the main protagonist in the book, and we're going to be talking to the panelists and also hopefully hearing from you listening in today. So first of all, our panelists are, in no particular order, Michelle Armitage, Donna Morfett, and Zoe Thompson. And if I could ask each of them in turn, please, to say a couple of words, a couple of sentences about themselves. And starting with you, please, Michelle.
Hi everyone, my name's Michelle. Apologies for the poor light. I'm away from home at the moment. I've had a career change from HR to interior design, and I think that's enough. I don't want to steal Helen's thunder, but I'm a writer too, and I enjoy being a beta reader for Helen, and I love her books. Read all of them.
Okay. Well, I said Donna second, but actually I got that wrong. Zoe, let's go with you next.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everybody. So I'm Zoe. I work as a self-development coach and have been working full-time as a coach since 2017. Prior to that, I worked for the police for 20 years before I was made redundant. So I went from the police service to redundancy to running my own business. So career change quite late in life for me too. I'm not a writer. I do put together blogs every now and then, but also enjoy reading Helen's books as a beta reader.
Thank you, Zoe. Donna, how about you?
So I'm Donna. I worked at a job for 14 years. I was unfairly fired. So I decided to go and get a degree. So I graduated last year with a degree in forensic science. Unfortunately, I haven't quite yet escaped from working in retail, which is what I've done since I was 16, but I'm working on it.
Okay, thank you. Now, Helen, at a fairly early stage, and I think probably pretty soon, I'm going to ask you to read a couple of extracts from the book. And if you'd like to tell us, first of all, by the way, where these extracts come from in the book.
Of course. Hello, everyone. I'm Helen, also known as AA Abbott, a psychological thriller writer based in Bristol, where the new book is set. And I used to live in Birmingham, which is how I'm a member of both the Bristol Fiction Writers Group and Birmingham's New Street Authors, the self-publishing collective who are kindly hosting this meeting on Zoom. And David Wake, the co-founder of the New Street Authors, is doing technical support. So I just want to say thank you to him. I'd like to read a couple of extracts from the early part of the book. As Michael said, the main character in the book is somebody who's changed careers. She's called Jenna. She's a young woman who was doing a safe job in insurance, but she always dreamed of having her own bakery and cafe. So finally, she chucked in her safe job in insurance and opened a cafe. But unfortunately, a combination of the pandemic and a slippery ex-boyfriend and rising costs mean that she is really struggling to stay afloat. So I'd like to read the first page of the book where we get an idea of Jenna's problems. So I'll begin with page 1 from chapter 1 about Jenna. I saw them peer through the window, blocking Bristol's autumn sunshine with their bulk. While it was pleasantly warm in my cafe, I shivered, already on edge. I'd just received emails hiking my car insurance and increasing the rent. How could I afford it? The pair of burly men unsettled me further. Like giant crows circling, they hovered outside. It triggered memories of the cops coming round after my mother's death. That had been almost a decade ago, though. Why would they return now? Anyway, these guys wore black bomber jackets rather than police uniform. Are you okay? Andrew looked up from his laptop. Grit in my eye, I lied, rubbing at one of them. You ordered a flat white, didn't you? With an extra shot. How else do you kickstart Monday? One of the men outside began speaking on his phone. They both moved out of sight. I exhaled, relaxing into the cafe's cosy atmosphere. Scents of butter, sugar and spice lingered in the air. Pink paint and candy-striped bunting added to the sweetness. They'd been a labour of love, my personal stamp on the premises when I'd opened as Jenna's Cupcakery. Most days, I matched the retro feel with 50s-inspired clothing. This morning, I'd thrown on a full-skirted flowery dress, ballet flats and thick makeup. A carnival glass choker glittered at my neck. It threw rainbow flashes onto the walls when it caught the light. This was almost the future I'd mapped out with Mum. We both enjoyed baking. I'd always adored a vintage vibe too. When I grew up, she said, we'd open a coffee bar together, converting the front room of our family B&B in Minehead. I would fill it with cute knickknacks, cakes, and smiling customers. I thought it would never happen after she died, but at last I transplanted my dream to Bristol. Here in Clifton, a suburb of my adopted city, I made cakes to die for. The only problem was money. Costs had risen so much that my business was struggling to survive. Now later, the two men come back and we learn that they really are the bearers of bad news. They're bailiffs and they're telling Jenna that she's in a lot of trouble. But meanwhile, she is not the only one with money worries. So I'd like to read another extract. Enter a man with a problem. He paced across the Persian carpet. It was vital to stand for the call, to appear assertive and strong. Finally, he jabbed the screen to dial back. What took you so long? I know, he interrupted. Do accept my apologies. You'll get your money. It was due yesterday. Tell me why I shouldn't break your legs. Macpherson's voice carried a Cockney undertone. That twang had made him feel superior when they were introduced at the races, as had Macpherson's flashy Rolex. He recognised his mistake now. Macpherson's success as an entrepreneur was built on an unconventional approach. He shuddered, imagining Macpherson in front of him, guzzling a brandy even finer than Sheila's Armagnac, blowing cigar smoke in his face. The stink of it always sent a surge of bile to his throat. You might overlook it when you were buddies, blowing cash on the horses together, but not when you were on the wrong end of a business deal. Well, you're not convincing me, Macpherson said. Can we agree an instalment plan? £20,000 first thing tomorrow? Sure, and 20 grand for each of the next 10 weeks. There was no point in working out the interest rate. It would be exorbitant. Done, he said. You're more sensible than you look, Macpherson told him. Ciao, and don't forget, first thing, okay? He stared at the phone long after Macpherson cut the call. Where would he find 20 grand quickly? Not everyone had Sheila Vincent's luck, sinking her polished talons into a captain of industry and inheriting half of his considerable estate on his death. She must have millions in the bank. It was her sole attraction. If only he didn't have a rival for her affections. It had been a shock to realise he wasn't alone in hoping to whisk Sheila down the aisle again. He wondered if the other fellow also intended, carefully and untraceably, to send her to her grave afterwards. It was proving a longer game than expected, but the prize was worth it. His debts were outweighed in value by the very rug beneath his feet. Some of those unloved books would be priceless too. Apart from the Shakespeare, the surrounding shelves accommodated rows of signed first editions. Tomorrow, he'd spirit a few of them away and visit an antiquarian dealer. He faced an unpleasant and possibly short future if he couldn't lay his hands on more funds. Macpherson, while his most vocal creditor, was not alone. Sheila sashayed into the library to be greeted by his most winning smile. "All taken care of," he said. "Deals and deadlines, huh? Goes with the territory, I'm afraid." She pouted, not a sexy look, although she might believe it was. Mitch never switched off either, except, well, there's the brat. Ah, he arranged his features into a semblance of sympathy. The love child. Love had nothing to do with it. Mitch just couldn't keep his trousers on for more than 5 minutes. Her face was ugly with scorn, her gaze intense. And now she's inheriting a fortune, money that should have gone to my children. He maintained a poker face. Her children were receiving fortunes too. The family business was going to the eldest, and the others would have £2 million each. He hadn't heard them complaining about it. "I've been researching probate law," Sheila announced, lips settling into a half smile. "Suppose the brat had an unfortunate accident and died without a will. Did you know my darlings would get everything she owns?" "Of course," he murmured, as he made it his business to know such things. "But it isn't likely to happen, is it?" "It could. I had a private investigator check up on her. A husband or children, even parents, would usually inherit, but she's not married, no kids. And her mother, the conniving bitch, died several years ago. I'm waiting to find out if there's a will. Is that something you can establish?" "I should think so, but it would be unusual for a single 20-something to bother, especially if she wasn't aware of her windfall yet. And what makes you think a healthy young girl would suffer an untimely death?" "I'm sure it can be arranged." She smirked, thrusting her wrinkled cleavage towards him. She was quite mad. Being charitable, it was the wine talking, a sumptuous Santamillion. He forced himself to appear delighted, even curious, allowing a slow grin to emerge. "I rather feel it's better to say no more. That comment is capable of being misinterpreted." Sheila's smile slipped. "But you have contacts, don't you? You come across all sorts in your profession. Don't you know people who could make it happen?" He did, Macpherson being one of them. But why should he do a lunatic's dirty work? It was risky to kill too often. "I could pay," she said. "A lot." He stiffened. His glance fell on the bookshelves. The brat should pray their contents were as valuable as he suspected. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, this is where the dramatic music comes in. Thank you, Helen. Thank you. By the way, I've someone's just put a message up. Martin Tracy has said Donna's dog is enjoying it, so that's good. I've just seen a message that says I've forgotten the name because the message has vanished now. Somebody said the sound is coming in and out, and the picture is occasionally freezing. Now, I don't know what the reason for that is, I'm afraid. But anybody else got any problems with sound or vision? No? Okay. Roger, shake his head, I can see. Claire to everyone, not here. No. Malcolm says no. And Francis
I'm saying no as well.
Everyone okay? Right. A couple of other messages that came up while you were reading there, by the way, Helen, which I will flag up. Somebody, and I've forgotten who, because its message has vanished now, says it's nice to hear the story being narrated as Helen wished, which prompted me to ask a question. I know this is available as an ebook, and as our technical supremo David flagged up at the beginning of the show, that's available for the price of a coffee, which is very topical to this evening, and a paperback and a hardback. But are you planning an audiobook as well?
It's possible, but no audiobook has been recorded as yet.
Okay.
And if it were recorded, I would definitely get a professional voice actor to do it.
Okay.
Because that happened with one of my previous books, Bright Lies. And seriously, I thought that I was good at reading out my books, but when a professional voice actor did it, it was so much better. I mean,
yes.
You're actually a voiceover artist as one of your many careers, Michael, aren't you? So
yes, but I tell you what, I would never put myself forward as a narrator of audiobooks, because it is a special skill. I do voiceovers, short stuff, you know, promotions and commercials and all that kind of thing. Doing an audiobook is very different, and when you hear the real professionals, then yeah, it's a different league, really. So you're wise to look at a professional. Now, a couple of things. Oh, it's one of our author friends here says she loves the cover. So could you show us the cover again, please, Helen?
much prettier than my face. Here it is.
No, come on. The themes here were obviously crime, or there's always crime in your books, and this one has got career change as well, and coffee. So so David's message, ebook available for the price of a coffee, is great. Now, could I think the timing is right, I think, really, to ask our panelists here to say a few words, if they'd like to, about their experience of career change. Oh, someone here message saying, I have the paperback for a book tour I'm doing for your book, Helen, but that hardback looks good. Someone you know, Helen. Anyway.
Yes, one of the lovely bloggers. Thank you very much. I really like the hardback too. This, as far as I know, is the only copy available in existence. We might have a little giveaway of it later.
Yes, we do indeed have a couple of giveaways, do we not, Helen? Yes, exciting stuff. This is where the host always says, please stay to the end for the giveaway time. Yeah, it's an old trick, but it usually works. Okay, right. No, so please, panelists, you've said a couple of words about yourselves. What I'd like to do is to encourage people. Here we are. Thank
Has Michael frozen for anybody else?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll just have to ask the panel some questions instead in that case. I'm very grateful to you all for coming along to speak, especially as you all beta read the book. And I think you all felt the theme of career change was relevant to your own situations as well, because you have had at least 2 careers each, and in some cases multiple careers. And it's also something that resonates with me, because for many years I worked as an accountant, and then I spent the best part of a decade working as an accountant for parts of the year and a writer for the rest of the year, until eventually I took the plunge and became a full-time writer. And I've never been happier, I have to say.
Wow.
And Michelle was one of the people who nudged me gently in that direction. So I'm very grateful to her for that.
Right. Thanks for that, Helen. So you're saying really that having made that career change, and it must have been scary to begin with, you know, any self-published author as you are making that jump, it's a scary time, but you're saying you've never been happier. What about you, Zoe?
Same for me, never been happier. Don't get me wrong, I loved absolutely all of my time with the police service. Self-employment has its own challenges, as Helen will now know, of that not having that reliance of an income each month does add a certain amount of pressure. But I think what I would say is that whilst it's relentless, it's much more in line and on your own terms when you're self-employed. You also get to choose what you do and how you spend your day, and add that flexibility in. So whilst I absolutely loved my career with the police, I love even more now what I'm doing.
Excellent. Excellent. So you're now advising people who are considering life changes, basically. Hence, I love your business name, Phoenix.
Thank
Yeah?
you.
Very appropriate, isn't it? Michelle, I know you've made a very significant career change. What do you want to say about it?
Okay, so about 8 years ago, I was in a senior HR role, and I think I worked in HR for about 28 years. And I did various different things within HR. Is one of those professions that's quite broad, so you can do lots of different things, so employee relations and development. But I really think I started to get bored, and I was at Hasselville Health. So there were lots of things, but I did a lot of dramatic things. I sold my house because I couldn't afford to pay for it without that career. I went into rental, put some money in the bank, and I wasn't sure straight away what I was going to do. So I left my job not knowing what I was going to do next. And I remember going networking with a friend, and we called me the woman in transition. We just didn't know what I was transitioning to. So it was an exciting time, but quite a scary time. Well, how old was I? 48. And I've got kind of three loves: nature, psychology, and art. And I think you put all of those together, that what I do now, which is interior psychology, which is understanding how our environment impacts us and our health and well-being, and how to help people choose their style and create design that works for them, both in the home and the workplace. It's kind of a bit of a journey to get there. And I've always been obsessed with property and interior. So I did retrain in interior design, and I found the courses I think what's interesting when you're a career changer, certainly Zoe might identify with this, you're bringing a lot of skills from your previous life. And I thought, where's the psychology in interiors? My first degree, psychology. And I didn't see it. I couldn't find it. I had to go look for it. But that's been an interesting journey too.
Thank you. Okay. Now, Donna, are you want to say anything about career change? Because I know that you're considering changes at the moment.
So my career journey so far has been quite crazy. When I was 18, I went to university for a year when I left school, because that's what everyone did. And I started a geography degree, realised I hated it, didn't finish the year. Got a job with my auntie in a petrol station. So yeah, I started working at this petrol station at weekends, went full time, ended up working from the very bottom to the very top. I ended up doing bookkeeping. I managed the petrol station for a while, and also I went off and it was on a complex, and I ended up managing a café. I've done that for about 3 years, and then I was on 35 in 2016. Which completely destroyed me. I'd worked there since I was 19, I think. So I'd grown up there, really. So that completely ruined me, especially because it wasn't fair. It was completely unjustified. And I always swore that if anything happened with that job, I'd go back to university and get the degree that I never got when I was 18, which is what I did. But I still needed the job, so I started working part-time at Greg's. And I'm still there.
Okay.
So I took my degree over, I think it took me about 4.5 years in the end, because I had to finish it during the pandemic. But in the meantime, I've also found that I love blogging and being a beta reader. And I've also written my first book, which is out on submission at the moment. And I also organise events. So I found finally what I want to do. It's just a way of finding a way to make it pay. So I want to get a retail because I hate it with every fibre of my being. So I need to find a way of escaping growth and doing what I love.
Oh, well, it's nice to hear that, doing what you love and every fibre of your being. That's a great phrase. And you know what? You've reminded me years and years ago, when I was on holidays with my kids, somebody was running a kind of life planning seminar in this. It was a weird kind of holiday, really, that you would have such a thing offered to you, but it was. So I went along, and they asked you two questions. And the questions came from an American writer called Brian Tracy. And he calls them 2 questions that 5 minutes that will change your life. That's what he called it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And the first question was, what would you do if you won $1 million on the lottery? Now, this was several years ago. So you can test that from the fact he said $1 million. These days, you might say 10 million, whatever it is. However much money you think you'd need to never work a day in your life. If that happened, what would you do? How would it change your life? What would you do? Where would you be? With whom? Doing what? Etc. Etc. So you were asked that question, and the corollary of that question, he said, Brian Tracy said, who originally wrote that thing, he said, these are the things that are clearly important to you. So A, why are you not doing more of them now? And B, do they need 10 million? Yeah. So anyway, that was one question. And the other question was even more challenging. If you suddenly learned that you were going to live 90 days in perfect health and suddenly drop dead in 90 days, how would you spend those 90 days? And again, the corollary was, those are the things important to you. So yeah. And this career change, it throws up questions sometimes which we didn't want to face. And sometimes we're forced to face them by redundancy, or along comes COVID and stuff like that. So obviously, there are many, many people now doing stuff. For example, in Clifton, Helen and I met for a coffee, did we not? At least once, in a little cafe it's an outdoor cafe called Can't Dance Coffee. I'm not clear on why they call it that. Yeah, anyway, and I talked to the people it was originally literally a cart. David Rigby has said, I've worked for myself for 25 years. So listen, David, hopefully in a minute, I'm going to give you a chance to unmute yourself and say what your experience was like about that. But yeah, Can't Dance Coffee was started, first of all, as a cart, and now it's a little kiosk, isn't it, really? A very smart looking kiosk in Victoria Square in Clifton. And how it started was that the 2 people, the partners who started it, they were event managers for quite a high-profile institution. If I had to guess, I'd say the British Museum or someone like that up in London, and they were made redundant just like that overnight at the start of COVID. And they thought, right, what are we going to do? So they did what your protagonist here wanted to do, Helen, which is to start a cafe. So yeah, sometimes people are forced into it by things which they didn't plan, like COVID, like redundancy, etc. But yeah, that's enough from me now. So now, David, we weren't going to bring you in because you're the technical supremo who keeps us in order and makes sure that things go okay on the technical side. But did you want to say a few words? Because you said something about the fact that you have changed your job status recently.
Yes, I mean, I've gone freelance full time myself. Gave up the day job, which is the advice to writers is you should never give up the day job. 2 have done it, so yeah.
So you gave up the day job. Helen has. Okay. And how recent was that, David?
It was during the pandemic, really. It gave a lot of people a chance to sort of sit back and reassess themselves and make decisions.
Yes.
A lot of people changed direction because of it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Now, we've asked people if they wanted to ask a question to put a question in the chat, or to click on the thing that enables you to raise your hand electronically. And I can't see if there are any here. Paula says, I like the what would you do if. Yeah, those are key questions, aren't they? Yeah.
I'm just having a look to see if anyone's raising their hand electronically, but I can't see that they are. I wondered if Zoe might give a bit of advice to Donna, as after all, Zoe is a professional advisor to people looking to change direction as a life coach.
Well,
yes.
After the conversation when we all met on Monday, I have sent Donna a workbook that might help to ask, or help Donna to ask different questions. But having heard her speak now, it sounds as if she does have the clarity on what she wants to do. It's putting the detail into how to make that work. And ultimately, that's my role as a coach, is not necessarily to help people like with the answers, but to help people to find the answers. And so we're creatures of habit in the way that we think and the way we tend to approach things. So the benefit of having a coach or talking things through with a friend is that they will ask you different questions to help you see things from a different perspective, that then helps you to see different options or different opportunities that you might not have seen through your own way of thinking. And for me, when I sit with people that are exploring a career change, it's really getting down to the root of what's important to them. So what are their passions? What do they feel very purposeful about? What do they recognize are their skills, their transferable skills, everything that's going into the melting pot. And my personal opinion is that when we talk about careers in school, we talk about careers specifically, about certain careers and certain jobs. We don't talk about what people want to spend their days doing. What are people passionate about? What are people skilled at? So that's what I spend my time doing in sessions, is helping people to get to the core of how they want to spend their time, rather than looking at what job that might be or what industry that might be in. Is how do you want to spend your day? What are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? And what might that look like in terms of a job? So it's really just that exploratory conversation to help people get that clarity, and then also then start to design, okay, if you're here now and you want to be here, what does that look like, and what steps do you need to take to get there, and how do you then take those steps?
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned you've sent Donna, or you're about to send, or you have sent her one of your career planners. Well, wrong word. Maybe a day planner connected with the life change decision. Yeah, career change decision. Tell us a bit about that. Please. So I'll tell you why, because we're going to give a copy away, are we not, as a competition prize.
So what I've sent to Donna is a PDF workbook. However, I think what you're referring to is the planner journal, which, Donna, yes, if you let me know your details, I'll send you one of these as well. So this is something that I put together, back in 2017. So they've been running for a little while. But what I found was, when working with people, a lot of people need the support to be able to put a plan in place. So it's got a goal setting section in there to be able to look at, what do you want to achieve over 12 months? How do you break that down into the quarters, into the months, into the weeks? What does that look like on a day-to-day basis? And the second part of it is around consistency, because a lot of people know what they want to do on a daily basis that helps take them closer to where they want to be. But it's the consistency of having that accountability and showing up for themselves each day. So there's a daily planner in there as well, which feeds into health and well-being, which is a big part of what I do. But it's around the habits, the behaviors, and the steps to where they want to get to. But yes, that's the big chunky journal. So it's not designed to be carried around with you. It's designed to sit on your desk or on your bedside cabinet to check in morning and evening, or morning or evening. Good.
And I'm glad you mentioned it features health and well-being too, because someone's put a question in the chat. Do you also help people who have chronic health problems? And by the way, the thing is that you said it at one point. You said, you could get help from a coach or your family when you're facing decisions like this. And obviously, family is wonderful, and family is the reason I moved from Bristol, where I've had 20 very happy years, to Birmingham in order to be close to family. So it's very important. However, family usually, when they're in these kinds of conversations with you, make assumptions about you which might or might not be the right ones to make. Whereas a coach, hopefully a coach who's, who knows what they're doing, doesn't make assumptions. I do a bit of coaching myself, but I coach, it's a very different kind of coaching. I coach speakers, and that's different, because that's really mentoring. Whereas what you're doing is coaching, where you start really with a blank sheet of paper, and really you make no assumptions about who they are and what their lives have been so far. So anyway, thank you. Now, there's a question here, by the way, before we go further on this career change thing. Roger Cork has asked a question. Helen, I read your book and loved it. Without giving away the plot, thank you, Roger, well done. What I loved most was the blinding twist near the end and the brilliant way you set that up earlier without alerting the reader. How do you write your thrillers, and do you plot your thrillers out in advance, or do you fly by the seat of your pants? So this is the key question that authors are always discussing. Are you a plotter or a pantser? So Helen, do you want to answer that?
I'm definitely a plotter. Always plotting, that's me.
Okay, well, you were an accountant really in your other life, were you not? So I suppose that's not too surprising.
An Excel spreadsheet might be involved. I couldn't possibly comment.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I tell you what, he says, I love the blinding way that with the twist, and as the man said, remember all the compliments you receive and forget the insults. And if you can do that, will you please tell me how? So anyway, let's have a look. 3 new messages here. Okay, someone's asking, yes, Zoe has answered Claire's question. Question from Michelle. Helen, how do you dream up such evil characters? What is there? What she didn't add was, what is there about your life that you are able to dream up such evil characters? That's from Michelle.
I
You might or might not want to choose that to answer that question.
Yeah. I'll plead the 5th on that one.
The 5th. Okay, that's a great phrase, isn't it? Really, we don't have anything in Britain to that's equivalent to that, but I guess we know what you're saying. Now, before we get to towards the end, oh yeah, I wrote down here the word parachute, which reminds me of this. I think one can't talk even for 5 minutes about career change without referring to what was for years the best-selling book of all time about career change, and it's called What Color Is Your Parachute? Now, I would imagine it's still in print. It's been reprinted so many times, and years and years ago, when my company was being taken over, I was pondering what to do next. So yeah, I've been through this career change thing, and so I got a copy of this. I read it for a while, and in the end, it was a bit too prescriptive for my taste, but some of the things that they said were fantastic. And one of the things that I still remember, and this was 30 years ago, because I'm quite old, was this: why not create a little, like a matrix representing your life so far, where your life so far is divided up into 5-year boxes. And so in the y-axis, you've got the 5-year boxes, and across the x-axis, you could say subjects. Like, for example, where were you living? What was your work if you were working? What were you studying if you were still a student? Who were your most important friends? Who were your family members that you were closest to, etc., etc.? What were the things that really engaged with every fiber of your being, to use the phrase that Donna used earlier? Because, and the person who wrote this book hit on something that I have never forgotten, because it could be you did something 10 years ago or 15 years ago that was really, really important to you at that time, but now you've forgotten it. And that thing, whatever it was, might be no more than to remind you of a hobby you had at the time, which you could maybe revisit, or it might be the basis of something you could do to make money. And there are a lot of people out there who are not only advisors and coaches like Zoe on how to design the ideal life for yourself in the future, but also advisors on how to start a business from nothing. And there are a lot of people have tried that, and many have succeeded, and even more haven't succeeded. But there is advice out there. So, What Color Is Your Parachute is a book I definitely recommend if it's still in print. Another one is called, it's not a bizarre title, it's called What Shall I Do With My Life? And it is written by an American called Poe Bronson. P.O. is his first name, Bronson, like in, Charles Bronson. And it's a fascinating book, very, very different from Parachute. It basically, he he put out there online the fact that he was writing this book, and he wanted to hear from people who had changed their lives in quite important ways. And he said, you know, email me if you have got a story that you want to tell me, and I will interview the 50 most interesting people as I see it. And so he did that. So he interviewed 50 or more people, and he wrote a book based on it. And it's really fascinating. So if you can find it, nothing to do with parachutes. What Shall I Do with My Life? Poe Bronson. And it's really, really, really good, because the way he interviews these people, even if those people were doing things that have no connection with your life and no connection with what you want to do in the future, it's something about the way the guy asked the questions in those interviews I thought was terrific. So, you know, I learned something about myself from reading about a bloke who started a fish farm. I've no intention of starting a fish farm, but, you know, it's sometimes you can learn from what other people do. I learned a lot from watching a documentary about Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, the 3-part documentary called Arnold. And it's fascinating. I have zero interest in bodybuilding. I've never watched one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's movies. And then he became a politician, did he not? He became governor of California. And just what came through about what you learned about his motivations and his journey, if you like, really, and what he remembered from what his parents told him. And he had a very, I would say, slightly dysfunctional relationship with his dad, but he never forgot the most important thing that his dad told him, which was be useful. And in his decisions, in making those changes from bodybuilder to actor and then to politician, and in all those changes, people lined up to tell him that's a stupid thing to do. You'll never make a success of being an actor. You'll never make a success of being a politician. I don't think you can do it. He said, the more people told me you can't do it, the more determined I became to have a go. Anyway, that's enough from me now. Anybody want to chip in, please, about their own experience or career change?
I'll say something, because at a very late age, I just asked myself the question, which is another question that's often in the books, is what's your bucket list? What's the one thing you don't want to die, or you would be really upset if you hadn't done before you died? And I went to Spain to study flamenco. I now can dance at a very high professional level. I went for 6 months and stayed 8 years.
Wow.
And Helen knows that, because I've not long got back. And we'll be starting a PhD in flamenco, because it's not studied in an academic way. And I've just been asked to perform in a café in Totterdown. So that sort of burgeoned into a very late performance career at my age. I'm in my 70s.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And as I am also in my later years, I've just celebrated, as Helen knows, my 80th birthday, and I'm still open to further career changes, I can assure you. And so, yeah, Totterdown, well, I tell you what, my 20 very happy years in Bristol, I learned one thing. Bristol is such a vibrant city in terms of performance opportunities. I never knew anywhere that had so much live music in cafes and pubs. So I'm sure you'll be very popular. And I urge you to get in touch with the people who run El Rincon in Southville. I bet you know El Rincon.
I know them as well. Yes, I will, because my former dance teacher about 20 years ago used to dance with God, I can't remember his name. I hope I'm a lot better. I hope I'm a lot better, but yeah, I know El Rincon very well. Good.
And listen, before we finish, there's one more thing which wasn't in the original plan, but I think it's appropriate. I wouldn't mind betting there's a few of you are authors here, because Helen knows a lot of authors. And David Wake, apart from being the guy who's kindly provided us the hosting for tonight, is also a key member of New Street Authors. And so, David, because I'm an author and I've written half a dozen books and I'm going to plan to write some more. And by the way, before the end, I'm also going to ask Helen and Zoe to talk a little bit about, not Helen, Donna and Zoe and Michelle to talk about their books. So, David, you'd like to tell us something about New Street Authors, please?
Sure. New Street Authors is simply a collective of independent publishers who get together to help one another. So we've got 20 odd members, 3 sensible members, so that's 23 in total, who all sort of join together, help each other out in Zooms. We do events and so forth. So if anybody's sort of interested in self-publishing or independent publishing, please get in touch with one of us, myself or AA Abbott, and ask us about how we can help and how you can help us, for that matter. I mean, Helen, how did you find us as useful to yourself?
I found New Street Authors has been really, really helpful to me. I was first introduced to New Street Authors, I think, by a magazine editor in Birmingham who'd come across you when you launched. And she insisted that I go along to your second meeting. So I can't claim to be a founder member like some of you, but at least I was there quite early on. And I found your advice on publishing professionally has been extremely helpful. And also the beta reading help that I've had from people like yourself and others in New Street Authors. Very, very useful in polishing up a book. In fact, I think there are quite a few people in the audience here who are beta readers. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. You have made the book so much better. And I'm sure when you read it again, you will know that because you saw the draft and it wasn't pretty.
And also thank you to you for helping us. I mean, it's a mutual collective of helping each other. Yeah. So anybody wants to get in touch, please do.
Thank you, David. I certainly will get in touch because, as I said, I now live in the wonderful city of Birmingham, and I'm only 10 minutes away from New Street. If I get on the wonderful tram system you have here, and oh God, if only the mayor of Bristol was listening, I'd say, for God's sake, Marvin Rees, get up to Birmingham and see they've got the public transport organised there. Anyway, I'm getting off the point here. Now, Zoe, you said you don't have any books apart from this wonderful planner thing that you've got, but David, you were far too modest to mention this, but I will mention one of your books, and David has published quite a few novels and also I think a play or two, yes, 4 plays, novels, and this book called Punk Publishing. So anybody who's logged on tonight and is an author, please check out this book, Punk Publishing, and it's published, well, look online, you'll find it, I'm sure. It's probably published by newstreetauthors.com.
Thank you very much. It is a book on why you should self-publish and exactly how to go about it. And one of our beta readers on Punk Publishing actually published her book while testing our book. So it does work.
Fantastic. And by the way, Helen, you mentioned your beta reader and you thanked your beta readers, which was nice. And I know that Zoe, Donna and Michelle, you are 3 of her beta readers, and David too. But you may have more because I know you use quite a lot of beta readers, don't you?
It does make a big difference to the book to get help from other people.
Yes. Okay.
So yes, very grateful to beta readers, grateful also to all the bloggers who are here in the audience, because without people who are prepared to review my books, it'd be really hard to spread the word. So I have a lot of people to thank, in addition to the lovely, lovely panel, of course, and yourself, Michael.
Well, and so, somebody had asked you the question, by the way, Helen, a follow on from Michelle's question. Are these evil characters based on anyone you know?
Oh, no, they're not actually. But interestingly enough, a couple of people won the right in Facebook competitions to be named in the book. So there is a person in the book called Andrew Maxwell who bears no resemblance to the extremely charming real Andrew Maxwell in real life. And I feel obliged to say that.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, suddenly a lot of messages have come through, and I'll read a couple of them out because you may not have had a chance to log on to the what color is your parachute. Oh, thank you, Marilyn. Yes. What color is your parachute 2023? Yeah, Richard Bollers is, yeah, I'd forgotten the author's name. So thanks for that, Marilyn. Yeah, sorry, a couple of people have said they had to go. How to remember the compliments? I write them down in a book, says C.V. Morgan. Yes, indeed. Yeah. This is your second book set in Clifton, I think, says Francis. Will you set another one there or return to Birmingham? Or Helen, that's a question for you.
That's a really good question. I suspect the next one will be set in Bristol and likely to be set in Clifton because I'm already working on it.
Yes.
So
okay.
I think the scope for moving cities is a bit limited, but it is possible.
Thank you. Going back to an earlier question from Claire about people who have chronic health problems. Now, Zoe replied to her, and I'm not repeating anything that can't be seen by everyone here, but as with any coach, and I'm one, Zoe has a network of fantastic other practitioners who may be able to help if she can't help with that specific question. Now, will we see another Jenna in another book, says Roger. Roger was very liked the plotting very much, Helen. So I think you have to listen to what Roger says because he's been reading it with great interest. How to remember the compliments? I wrote them down in the book. Yeah, that remembering the compliments comes from a famous spoken word record published by Baz Luhrmann, the film director, who published and made it was a big hit, I believe. My kids tell me it was in the 80s or 90s. It was called Everyone's Free to Wear Sunscreen, which is a bizarre title, but it was you might say it was a commencement address, which is what the American universities call them, full of homespun wisdom. And the best one of all was this: remember compliments you receive, forget the insults. And if you can succeed at that, will you please tell me how? So C.V. Morgan says, I write them down in the book. Very good advice. Peter had to leave, and so thank you for Marilyn. What color is your parachute? Been reprinted, I thought so. Richard Bollers on Amazon. That's a very long course, says Lee Benson. I think he was talking about your flamenco course, actually, probably Marilyn. So yeah. And Claire says she's really interested to hear other people's stories. Yes, yeah, that's the whole point of that book that I told you about called What Should I Do With My Life by Poe Bronson. Because you read, sometimes you read a book like that of people who faced voluntary or forced career changes and see what was the process they went through and what they came up with. And sometimes it may have no concrete connection with your life, but suddenly you might get a light bulb moment. Anyway, where are we? And
we're coming towards the end, I think.
We are coming to the end in 3 minutes. I wrote a blog. Yes, right. Yeah. Okay. So someone's saying, Judy Clark is saying, need to go. Thank you for interesting evening. Lee Benson, I owned and worked in art gallery for 14 years, then became an artist, seeing the world from both sides. You know what? I reckon based on the people who've come to this event, Helen, we could start a little community, an online community, exchanging ideas on career change. And that will promote your book as well, would it not? Yeah. And it could be hosted maybe by David Wake's New Street Authors. Who knows? How to promote a book, as a colleague of mine used to say, coming in sideways. So anyway, I think I've got another 14 messages here. We haven't got time for them. So yeah, as I was supposed to ask for entrance to a competition for a hardback copy of the book. and I'm going to, which is Flat White Lies, the hardback version of it. We haven't got time to do the competition, but I'm going to pick a person at random, and at random here among the, I said stay till the end because you got a chance of winning. So picking at random, a hardback copy of the book is going to go to Roger Cork because he's still here, and I can see a big smile. Thank you. And a copy of Zoe, your book there goes to, now there we are, you see, to recognize. Now, some people I can't see, so I'm going to pick someone that I can see, and that is Jeanette. Jeanette, I can see you. You're muted, but you're going to get a copy. Hopefully it's of use to you. Copy of Zoe's planner book. Okay, so there you go. And if it's no good to you, well, it'll be a useful Christmas present, won't it? Okay, listen, it is now 8:59, so I think I'm going to wrap up and say thank you to our panelists. Thank you to David Wake for hosting this on your New Street Authors Zoom account. And thank you particularly to you, for Helen, for the book and for setting up this event. Thank you most of all to all of you for logging on and spending an hour of your time listening to us talking about Flat White Lies, of which the ebook is available for about the cost of a coffee. Thank you all for listening. Thank you and good night.